He would have signed the papers if not for the storm. One night, one crack of sky, and the earth opened its mouth. Morning smelled of wet wood and iron. The bank's letter sat on the table like a blade. 3 weeks. No extensions. No mercy. Ilya stepped onto the porch. Fence posts leaned like tired men. The tractor was a carcass of paint and rust. Soil under his boots answered with a dull, hollow note. Empty land. Heavy silence. But habit still moved his hands. Check the roof, cut the weeds, walk to the well. Clouds gathered like a verdict. Wind rose, then reared. Night fell hard. The house trembled on its old bones. Rain struck the windows like gravel. He sat on the bed's edge, eyes open, counting breaths, thinking of his father and his grandfather, how they held this ground with nothing but backs and will. What did he have left? At dawn the storm loosened its fist. The yard looked punched through. Branches down. Tin curled. The little coop was a mouth with missing teeth. Not worth fixing. No hens left. His gaze climbed the ridge beyond the backfield. And froze. Yesterday the slope was smooth, rooted, quiet. Today it was sliced open. A narrow seam, black as coal. Not a shadow. Not a trick. An opening. He stood a long time and listened. Water ticking somewhere below. A breath of cold from the cut. Stone cold, old cave cold. He knew about sinkholes. About bad luck with no one to hear you shout. He also knew about clocks you couldn't stop. He walked home slow. Sat on the steps. Wiped his palms on his pants. Looked once at the letter. Then got up and packed. A lantern with smudged glass. A length of rope he trusted enough to test twice. Old gloves. His father's pick. He went back to the ravine. The lip of the cut was slick with clay. He looped the rope around the root of a bent willow. Pulled. Pulled again. Not held. He bent. Breathed. Went in. Stone pressed close. The passage made him smaller. Lantern light shook on wet walls. Drops fell with a bright ping that carried too far. Is this smart? He thought. Is waiting for an auction smarter? He answered. 30 steps and the tunnel widened. Air grew thick, heavy on the tongue. The beams swept the floor. Dark circles like burned bread. He crouched. Ash. A ring of stones. He touched and the grey powder gave up its last shape. Someone had warmed hands here. Someone had waited out night. He raised the lantern. Saw marks on the wall, not cracks. Tallies and fives, neat and stubborn. Time counted in scratches. A crooked sign beside them, not his alphabet. Not shepherds. Workers. A crew that carved the dark to sell what the dark hid. He stood in that half-light until his arm ached. Then he backed out, one careful step at a time, listening for the mood of the rock. Outside, day had thinned toward evening. He breathed like a man surfacing. House. Letter. Debt. All still there. And something else now. A point of heat under the ribs. Not relief. Edge. He didn't sleep much. The house settled and the wind tested the eaves. In the black, a circle of remembered light hung behind his eyes. And the red line of the letter burned steady. He rose before the alarm. Tea. A heel of bread. He took down the pick and felt the handle warm to his palm. He tightened the rope around his shoulder. Opened the door. The field whispered under a pale sky. He went back. Not for curiosity. For work. For a chance with a shape. For the small, stubborn part of a man. That refuses to lie down while the clock is still ticking. The cave greeted him like a living throat. Damp, breathing, listening. Lantern light rippled over stone the color of smoke. The air was heavy, wet, and strangely sweet, like metal left in rain. He stepped carefully, palm grazing the wall. The rock was slick and cold, every drop that fell echoing like a heartbeat. After 20 steps, the space widened. The ceiling arched higher, shaped not by nature, but by effort. There were timbers, old, half-rotted braces wedged between the walls. Man-made. Without doubt. He lifted the lantern closer. On the ground lay the outline of a fire ring, stones blackened by time. A dusting of ancient ash that dissolved at his touch. Someone had lived here once. Not wandered in, lived. He crouched lower. Along the right wall ran rows of lines, small, steady marks grouped in fives. Tallies. He traced them with one trembling finger. 1, 2, 3, 4, cross. Counting days. Or lives. And above the tallies, something else. Symbols, cut deep and clean. Circles intersected with lines. Not letters, but meant to be read. His breath fogged the air. The thought struck him, I'm not the first. He turned the lantern. Its glow spilled across a fallen beam, burned at one end, as though it once served as a torch. The grain still held the shape of a hand. Whoever held it was long gone. But the imprint of purpose remained. The tunnel curved away into darkness. He should have turned back. But curiosity is a muscle. Once flexed, it refuses to rest. He followed the bend, each step echoing sharper than the last. A cold draft slid from ahead, carrying the scent of rust and earth. A smell both dangerous and inviting. The walls began to shimmer with veins of mineral, pale threads glowing faintly in the lamplight. Quartz. Iron. He didn't know. But something in the air shifted, a quiet hum. The sound of time itself grinding slow. He stopped. Listened. The cave had moods. Now it was holding its breath. He imagined men down here decades ago. Faces streaked with soot. Hands cracked and bleeding. Singing to the rhythm of their picks. He could almost hear them. A faint echo of voices carried through the rock. Not words, just cadence, like memory replaying itself. He felt suddenly small. This was no mere hollow in the hill. It was a record, written not in ink but in sweat. He crouched again, ran a hand across the floor. Bits of coal, flakes of rust. And under his palm, a groove, smooth and parallel to another. Two thin rails, half buried, running deeper into the dark. Tracks mining tracks. The lantern shook in his grip. Whatever this place had been, it wasn't accidental. It was built. And forgotten. He took one step forward, then another. The rails disappeared under rubble, swallowed by fallen stone. That was where he stopped. Enough for one day. Enough to prove the truth. His land sat on the bones of another world. He turned back, every drip and echo following him like footsteps. At the mouth of the cave, dusk had thickened to silver fog. He climbed out, dirt caked to his knees, lungs burning from the cold. The sky was low and bruised, the first star trembling through. The farm below looked small, crooked fences, a sagging barn. The home of a man who thought the earth had given all it could. Now he knew better. It still had secrets. And one of them had just whispered his name. By the third morning, the cave was all he could think about. It lived behind his eyes, humming in his blood. Like a question that refused to die. The world above ground felt smaller now. The fences, the dust, the empty barn, all temporary. But what waited below? That felt permanent. He rose before sunrise, ate in silence, and packed with care, as if heading to war. The lantern filled with oil. The rope coiled neat. His father's old pickaxe balanced across his shoulder, its weight both familiar and sacred. When he reached the ravine, mist still clung to the earth. The mouth of the cave yawned, patient, expectant. He hesitated, just once, then struck a match and stepped inside. The air greeted him like before, cold, wet, alive. The rails gleamed faintly under the lantern's glow, leading him deeper, guiding him towards something unseen. He followed the tracks for what felt like hours. The tunnel bent left, dipped slightly, then opened into a space wider than any he'd seen yet. He stopped, eyes scanning the walls. Pick marks. Hundreds of them. Every surface carved by human will. He swung the lantern in an arc. And there, half buried in the silt, something caught the light. Metal. A quick, sharp ring when his pick struck it. Not stone. Not junk. He knelt, brushing the dirt away with shaking hands. Edges. Straight. Forged. A box. Iron-bound. Heavy. Its lock eaten by rust but still holding on. As if guarding something that mattered. He whispered, without knowing why. Please, be real. The first hit bent his pick. The second cracked the hinge. The third, a sharp, final snap. Silence. Then the creak of metal surrendering to air after a century of sleep. He lifted the lid. And the breath left his body. Gold. Bars stacked like bricks. coins wrapped in cloth that had rotted to threads, and beneath them, papers, dry but intact, stitched together by twine gone brittle. He stared, unable to blink. The glow from the lantern turned the coins into small suns, their light dancing on the walls. He reached in, lifted one. Heavy, warm, solid. Not a dream. For a long time, he just sat there, lantern flickering, heart slamming. The cave's silence no longer felt empty. It felt like witness. Then the fear came. A sharp, electric thought. If I found this, others could too. He set the coin back carefully, pulled the papers out and flipped through them. Ledgers, maps, company seals, dates from a century ago. It was all here, the record of a mind forgotten by time, or buried on purpose. He packed the papers into his coat, closed the chest, dragged it toward a crack near the wall, covered it with fallen timber and dust. No one would see it unless they already knew. When he crawled back out into daylight, his hands were bleeding, his shirt soaked through, but his eyes, they burned with something fierce. He'd come down a ruined man. He walked out a keeper of gold. At the edge of the field, he stopped and looked back. The cave was quiet, still open, still waiting. He whispered, "Thank you." And the wind answered, soft and low. That night, he hid the papers under the floorboards, wrapped in canvas and bound tight. The gold could wait, the proof mattered more. If the land held this, then by right and blood, it belonged to him. Sleep wouldn't come. He sat by the stove till dawn, listening to the house creak, watching shadows move across the walls. For the first time in months, the silence didn't crush him. It hummed with promise, and with danger, because every secret that shines underground eventually draws eyes from above. The morning after the discovery, the world looked the same. Grey sky, dead grass, crooked fences. Yet something in the air had shifted. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was listening. He told himself to stay calm, to act like nothing had changed. But gold burns through calm faster than fire through paper. Every glance, every voice in town felt sharper, closer. At the general store, people looked twice. A pause too long here, a whisper there. Men who never greeted him before nodded first. He tried to smile back, but it came out wrong. He could feel the rumor crawling. Something found, something hidden, something worth dying for. That evening, as the sun melted behind the ridge, he saw riders on the horizon. 3 dark shapes. They didn't come close, just stood, watching, then vanished into the trees. That night, he didn't light the lamp. He sat by the window, rifle across his knees, listening to the boards breathe and the wind scrape against the roof. Every creak was a footstep. Every sigh of air was a whisper from the dark. At dawn, hoofprints marked the mud near his gate. No visitors. No greetings. Just the shape of interest stamped into the soil. Later that day, they came openly. 3 men on restless horses, faces drawn thin from suspicion and greed. They smiled with their mouths, not their eyes. "Evening, Hardy," one said, though that wasn't his name. "We heard there's something out in these hills. Old mine, maybe. Thought you might know about it." He kept his voice steady. "Nothing but rock and ghosts out there." They laughed. The sound was friendly in the way a knife glints friendly in sunlight. Then they turned and rode off. But their laughter stayed behind, echoing through the fields long after they were gone. That night, he locked the doors for the first time in years, set a chair against the handle, loaded the rifle, waited. Sleep came late, shallow, and full of rustling sounds that might have been dreams, or warnings. A few days later, others arrived. Different men, poorer, angrier. Their fathers had worked the mines once. They shouted that the gold was theirs by blood, that he was stealing what history owed them. He said nothing for a while. Then quietly, "You can't inherit what you abandoned." Their faces twisted. Words turned to threats. One spit near his boot before walking away. He knew what came next. The kind of justice men take into their own hands when law is too slow. So he acted first. At sunrise, he wrapped the documents tight, rode into town, and found a lawyer. An old man with small eyes and a clean desk. He read the papers, frowned, and read again. finally said, "They're real. All of it. But this'll stir up ghosts you can't shoot." Ilya nodded. "I've lived with ghosts all my life." The lawyer agreed to file the claim. Quietly, carefully. When he returned home, the gate was broken. The barn door hung open. Nothing stolen, nothing but peace. That night the sound came again. Steps on the porch. Slow. Testing. He raised the rifle but didn't move. The latch shifted, held, then stopped. Silence. Then retreat. He stayed awake till morning, staring at the line where darkness met the first pale light of day. By noon, he'd made his choice. He wasn't leaving. Not the land, not the fight, not the secret. If wolves wanted light, they'd have to walk through fire to reach it. He cleaned the rifle, checked the locks, and whispered to the floorboards, where the papers lay hidden. "They'll come for the gold. But the truth is mine." The verdict came quietly. No crowds, no headlines, no applause, just a letter sealed in wax, heavy with meaning. The land was his. Not just the soil, but what lay beneath it. He read it twice, maybe 3 times, each word sinking deeper than gold ever could. Then he set it down, walked outside, and let the wind carry the weight away. The valley was waking. Engines rumbled in the distance. Men in helmets and orange vests moved where weeds once ruled. The cave was no longer a secret, it was a sight. Measured, mapped, fenced. What had once been whispers was now a living hum of work. He stood by the ridge, watching trucks crawl like insects across the clay. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a ghost on his own land. He felt seen. Weeks turned into rhythm. Surveyors marked the boundaries. Machinery rolled in. New timbers replaced old ones. Floodlights pushed the shadows back, revealing every crack, every scar of the earth. And of his heart. The debts disappeared first, paid in full. Then the roof, repaired until it shone like new tin coins. The barn followed, painted red again. The color of memory. Fences straightened. Animals returned, cows lowing in the dusk, hens fussing in the yard. The silence that used to crush him now carried sound. The murmur of workers. The laughter of children chasing dust motes through sunlight. The low hum of a generator far away. In the evenings, Ilya sat on the porch, hands clean for the first time in decades, listening to the music of life returning. The same earth that once betrayed him, now breathed under his feet like a friend. But he hadn't forgotten. Gold can buy roofs, but not peace. And peace, he knew, had to be earned every day. So he worked beside the crews, not as a laborer, not as a boss, as the man who'd bled enough into the ground to call it his. He paid fair, spoke little, and watched carefully. When arguments broke out, he settled them with calm words and steady eyes. When new men came asking too many questions, he met them himself. The sheriff visited once, not with suspicion this time, but to shake his hand. "The county recognizes your claim," he said. "Not many folks stand their ground like you did." Ilya only nodded. He didn't stand his ground for pride. He did it because walking away would have killed him faster than hunger. By midsummer, the mine yielded steady ore. The accounts filled slowly, and the farm looked reborn. Neighbors came again, not to gossip or threaten, but to help, to trade, to share bread. Laughter replaced the echo of fear. And yet, every few evenings, he walked alone down to the ravine. The equipment was silent then, the lights dim, the cave mouth still there, dark, patient, eternal. He'd stand for a while, hand on the cool stone, listening to the quiet hum beneath the earth. He didn't fear it anymore. He understood it. That place had stripped him bare, tested every part of him worth keeping. He'd gone into it a man broken by debt and failure, and come out tempered, like metal forged by pressure and time. Now, as dusk slid down the ridge and the first stars blinked awake, he whispered to the darkness, not in fear, but in thanks. "For everything you took," he said. "You gave something back." He turned and climbed the hill, the night breeze following him home. Behind him, the cave breathed once, a long sigh through stone, as if the earth itself acknowledged the man who had listened. On the porch, He sat again under a sky that no longer felt so distant. The world had changed, but so had he. Where there had once been silence, there was now a pulse. Where there had once been despair, there was light, quiet, steady, and his own. And as the house creaked softly in the warmth of evening, Ilya smiled. He finally understood the truth his father once told him. The land gives back to those who don't stop giving to it.